Welcome viewers to the Personal Injury Law Show. My name's Tony Carbone, lawyer of 25 years plus experience in this area. Next to me I've got John Carancis, an accredited law specialist.
Evening,
How are you, John?
Tony. Evening, Tony. Evening, viewers.
And an up-and-coming superstar of the law and who does a lot of work cover related cases, Carolyn McGuinness. How are you, Carolyn?
Thank you, Tony. Hello,
Welcome
viewers.
aboard.
Good to be here.
And
Tony, what's in the news this week?
John, in the news there's a lot going on. But what I want to hone in on today, and this is a topic of discussion, viewers, is the issue about bullying. Now, people, when they think of bullying, they think it just relates to verbal abuse. We're going to give examples, and I'm going to get John and Carolyn to talk about it, of bullying made up of sexual harassment, assaults physically. There's a whole host of factors that constitute bullying. But there's also a lot of instances where it's not bullying. So we've got to be careful of that. Now, of particular importance is that there was a girl by the name of Brodie Panlock, a very young lady, who committed suicide after intense bullying at Cafe Vamp in Hawthorn.
Shocking case, Tony.
Oh, it's just outrageous what happened to her. Now, the bullying was mainly by one of the workers who apparently was dating her for a short time. He did all sorts of things to her, and I think I'm a bit disgusted to say it on camera, but if you read the story about this particular young lady, you can see that she went through quite a bit of trauma.
Yes.
Carolyn.
And if I recall correctly, Tony, the employer
Condoned the behaviour, did nothing to stop it.
and not only that, they received a huge fine from WorkCover.
Yeah,
They were prosecuted.
all the parties involved, making up of the employer and the individual in question, received fines totalling around $350,000. So it was pretty significant fines.
The largest in history.
That's correct. But the parents wanted to be, Carolyn, the parents of Brodie wanted to be something a bit more than just a fine. They wanted to hurt these people in the sense that punish them. They want a criminal responsibility.
And not only that, make sure this doesn't happen again in the future.
That's right. That's
Well, the
right.
law's actually changed now, hasn't it,
It
Tony?
has changed. And since Brodie's case, the government's now introduced laws to make it criminally liable in the most
Serious.
the worst circumstances. Yes. And these articles, they're about Brodie, they're about the parents' anguish and pain that they're going through. Also, when you talk about bullying, you've got the Defence Force under investigation at the moment. Kirkham, a senior QC, preparing a report. You've got the bullying, the cyber bullying going on internet and
And in the schools, Tony.
mobile phones, that sort of thing. So it's something that's being closely looked at.
Tony, is this occurring just now, or are we just realising this has been occurring for a long time?
This has been going on for a long time, and this is the subject that we're discussing tonight, which is bullying in general. Just so that you know, John and Carolyn, it's just amazing that the estimates they've got on the cost of bullying to our country in the future. There's a study done recently that says that bullying's going to cost Australia somewhere between $6 and $13 billion a year. The cost of workplace bullying to the victim is even more concerning in the sense that 75% of victims suffer long-term symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. And we all know how severe that is.
It's astonishing, Tony.
Do you remember the Voyager cases?
Absolutely. And the issue with Brodie in particular was that it was such a severe case of bullying that led her suiciding.
That's
It was
correct.
such a tragic case.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
And with the Voyager, Carolyn, we had a situation where people come up with post-traumatic stress how many years later? 40.
Absolutely. So it shows how long it can affect their life for such a long period too.
And so when you talk about these psychological injuries, they don't go away. They last forever, don't they?
They last forever and they affect not only the victim, but everyone around them too.
That's exactly right. That's exactly.
Absolutely.
Now, when we start talking about bullying, give us some examples of bullying. What are they, Carolyn?
Examples would be exclusion in the workplace, would be abusive language, would be failing to give proper directions, and the fact that you might be asking for directions and you're being ignored.
Systematic abuse.
Yes, absolutely. Just anything that would lead to the likelihood of an injury. It can be a whole host
But
of
it's
things.
not only confined to verbal and emotional, also physically, John?
It can be physical. It could be someone hip and
You're
shouldering you at work.
Are you trying to assault me now, eh?
No, well,
But, look, it can be physical and manifested by punching someone.
This is
or jabbing someone.
But it could be more subtle than that, though, in the sense of actually exclusion,
intimidation.
Email. Look,
We recall apprentices years ago at mechanics doing that to the young new bloke. That type of behaviour, isn't it, Tony?
yes.
This was brought up on a show. I was on the Triple M show one morning, and they were talking about footballers putting deep heat in the jocks, but that's a funny situation, that one.
Well, not for the victim, I guess, but no.
But also recently, the Equal Opportunity Commissioner was advertising for sexual harassment. That's bullying too, isn't it?
Absolutely. That's the most obvious, one of their most obvious forms of it.
Tony, under the law, under the Accident Compensation Act, this type of behaviour is an injury.
That's exactly right.
And you're entitled to various forms of compensation which
That's
arises
exactly right.
out of this injury,
That's
as long as it affects the actual victim.
That's correct. And I mean, the compensations, medical expenses.
Medical, weekly payments, and also importantly for a lot of clients would be common law damages.
Which
So-
is significant.
Which is
and
very
we're going to go to a case like that very shortly, Carolyn, a case that you ran for 10 days. Now, what doesn't constitute bullying, John? There's Section 82A. What's that mean?
Section 82A
Keep
of
it
the
simple.
Accident Compensation Act, reasonable actions taken by an employer in regards to an employee are not covered.
In other words, reprimanding the employee. Is that correct?
That's right. And if there's a performance issue, but again, it has to be reasonable management action. So bullying and harassment is clearly not reasonable.
So, Tony, an
What about
employer-
demoting someone? What about demoting someone? Is that bullying?
Demoting is not bullying, but
Well,
it has to be
the victim might say it is.
as long as they've followed due process and they've done it correctly. They've
Well,
gone through
the
the
victim
formal
might say
counselling process.
The employer has placed me in a position where I will be demoted. What about that type of
That's-
circumstance?
Well, that's similar to like constructive dismissal in a sense, isn't it?
What's important is the facts. That's what John's getting at.
Exactly.
And Carolyn, I think, means the same thing. The facts are very, very important, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Colin, you've got an article of a case you ran recently, haven't you?
Yes, our viewers might have seen this one of Pat DiPietro, which it was a 10-day jury trial in the county court. This is an interesting case because Pat had a prior back injury, just a bit of factual background about him.
do that.
He was in his 40s, he was a widower, he was left with 4 children, and
He's had a tough life.
he'd had a tough life. He had to go primarily on Centrelink payments, but then he got back his life back in order by way of.
You got a job
got a
at
job
International
as a-
Airline Services as
He
an
did. It took
aircraft
him-
cleaner?
It took him 5 years to get back to work, and he repartnered with someone. It was all really positive. So he's really excited about going back into the workplace. Now, he worked as a cabin cleaner.
Carolyn, can I just stop you there for a sec? We're going to have to go to a sponsors break, viewers.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
please don't go away. Stay tuned because it's a very compelling case. And Carolyn will take us back to it very soon, just after the break. Thank you.